Hi there. Welcome to Simplicity for Agility, the place where I share my thoughts on how to simplify things and ship better value faster. I'm happy you are joining me for a cutting chai, and today I'm going to share with you something about CSO Framework, which our teams have been using for many years now. Let me start with one question answer from one interview. And the question was pretty simple and straightforward. How do you feel about Agile now? The person who was being interviewed was Kent Beck. And you can clearly see his frustration from his answer. When he says that the Agile practices are becoming few religious rituals and it has become a devastated wasteland, obviously he is feeling the unnecessary cargo cult and the induced complexity in it. But a good question to consider is whether this business of being agile, should it be really all that complex? Let me share what others have thought about complexity. This is undoubtedly the most gifted person lived on this planet, and he says, any intelligent fool can make things bigger and more complex. It takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in opposite direction. This gentleman may not be all that genius, but certainly a genius in business sense, a great entrepreneur, and built successful businesses right from music industry to aviation. And he says, complexity is your enemy. Any fool can make something more complicated. It is hard to keep things simple. In the past, I used to wonder sometimes that why this business of being agile should be so complex. I think I got my answer from this gentleman. He is Edgar Dijkstra, winner of the Turing Award in 1972. Turing Award is considered as a Nobel Prize in computer sciences. And what he said opened my eyes. He says simplicity is a great virtue, but it requires hard work to achieve it. What he said next is even more important. And he says, and it makes matter worse because complexity says better. But we wanted to simplify our lives. And we did not want any framework so complex that we have to add someone in our team dedicated to tame that framework and keep teaching others about values and principles, etc. We wanted to simplify our working processes, not make them rigid, or not make them based on any rituals. We want everybody to ask the intent behind it. Lastly, and maybe this is most important, we were anyway not very keen to be part of any agile industrial complex or certification industry. Actually, we wanted something which will always show us the North Star and help us to inculcate, at times nudge us to develop a strong bias for action. These two lines can tell you what we did. Simplicity boils down to two steps: identify the essential and eliminate the rest. This is exactly what we did. I can't say that we decided one day that we should create a framework. That was not the case at all. Our processes evolved over years and it ended up being a framework. And for a good reason, we started calling it as a CSO Framework. And it consists of 3 prerequisites, 5 questions, 7 guidelines, and 2 rules. Let me give you a gist about these 4. Like any ambitious initiative, becoming a great agile team also needs some prerequisites to be fulfilled. These 3 prerequisites are very crisp and clear to understand and extremely simple to validate. About 5 questions. Who asked these questions? Everybody and anybody, irrespective of your responsibility and skill set, can ask this question to yourself or to any other person. When these questions are asked, These 5 questions are just running in everybody's mind like a background process, like a daemon process in Unix. At appropriate time, this daemon process will pop up and take the right action. In similar way, these questions which are lingering in your mind will pop up in appropriate time, and then they will nudge you to take the right action. These 5 questions, I can say, is the heart of CSO framework. These are 7 guidelines. These are not mandates. These are not rules. These are just suggestions. And then there are 2 roles. You can say that every role has a hat, and a person will be either playing role A or role B. That is not the case. Every person wears both the hats because everyone has a dual role in CSO framework. I can say that with CSO framework, organizations can build great agile teams. And not only that, they can ship better value faster. I think shipping better value faster is far more important than building agile teams or building agile culture, etc., etc. Because I firmly believe that being agile is never the end objective. It is the vehicle or a means to ship better value faster to the market. And we can do that without going overboard on things like these. I'm not saying these are bad things. They're very good to understand. But endlessly discussing and dissecting these terms doesn't take you anywhere. With confidence and with first-hand experience, I can say teams ship better value faster using common sense oriented framework, and that too without banking on any latest fashionable buzzwords. So with that, let me tell you what are these 3 prerequisites. Number 1, everybody should have burning desire to do better in terms of end objective, which means everybody knows what is end objective. And secondly, you cannot have role specific or person specific end objective. There is only one end objective for a team. Keeping eyes, ears and mind open and curiosity alive. This may sound very simple, but when I come across dozens and dozens of teams where the team members are very quick to refer to XYZ guide and so page number to justify their thinking, it doesn't give me great confidence that their curiosity is alive. They are just willing to go by the book. Thirdly, willingness to maintain complete and brutal transparency. There is nothing like complete transparency which teaches you so many things. So that was about prerequisites, simple to understand and simple to validate. Any team honestly can decide whether they fulfill these prerequisites. About the 5 questions, as I said, anybody and everybody can ask this question to yourself, to your colleagues, to anybody in the team. And when to ask these questions? These questions are always floating in your mind. Let us go through the questions so you will come to know what is the right time to ask these questions. First is there any other backlog item which can produce higher ROI than this? Typically, when you are planning the next iteration, when this question is lingering in your mind, you will always go for what will produce highest value to market. And when you say you should know what can produce higher ROI, you must know for every backlog item what is the cost and what is the value it can generate. Second is, can we slice this even smaller and even thinner? This will nudge you to do finer and smaller vertical slices of your stories. Third, what is the VOC and what is the feedback on the work we have just shipped? Just shipping is almost meaningless unless we get the feedback from market. Whether it is good, whether it is not good, any feedback is a good feedback. A feedback which doesn't resonate with your thinking at least can allow you to do quick course correction. Next is why there are so few test cases and acceptance criteria for this backlog item. A good practice is always assume that there are not sufficient test cases. This will again nudge you to start working only based on the test cases. Lastly, can this be made even better? This will always force you to think about refactoring and removing the technical debt. The 7 guidelines ensure common understanding about the end objective. You cannot have different end objective in different people's mind. You have to have common end objective across the team. Keep very sharp, laser sharp focus on outcome rather than output. Identify and remove the worst bottleneck. Rather than attacking too many bottlenecks at a time, just try to find out the worst bottleneck and try to remove it. Every team should have information radiator. Not only it should have, but it should always be visible to all. Accept the fact that there are and there would always be few unknown variables in the system. You will never ever know exact specs of any user story or any work which you undertake. So your job would be to minimize the unknowns and minimize the impact of those unknowns. But you will never ever have 100% frozen specifications in hand. And that is why the 6th guideline is so important. Try to make feedback loop shorter. Shorter the feedback loop, lesser the waste you will generate. Lastly, the team must accept common accountability towards your end objective. Though I say there are 7 guidelines, honestly, only 2 also can do the magic. And those 2 are the first and the last. I say only 2 can do the magic because when you have these 2 guidelines followed, I'm pretty sure the rest of the things always fall in place. And then there are 2 roles. Every team has people with different skill sets and responsibilities, and team members interact with each other. For example, VP sales and product manager. One demands more features, but in return can provide more relevant user interviews. You see engineer and developer. One demands early version of the development, but in return can provide more relevant test cases early so that the work is done much better. Client success manager and the product owner. One demands more and more features, but in return can provide beta program users also so that the VOC program is done much more meaningfully. In short, there are only 2 roles, doer and demander. But the good part is every person is playing both the roles and everybody has a dual role in any team. A team which realizes that everybody is a doer and a demander has far more chances of winning the market. So that is the gist of CSO Framework. 3 prerequisites which are easy to understand and easy to validate. 5 questions which form the heart of CSO Framework. 7 guidelines which are just guidelines. These are not mandates. And 2 roles which everybody in the team is expected to play. If you have any comments, I will be happy to hear from you. Take care of yourself and your family. Stay safe and have a very good day.